From WisPolitics in Madison, you're listening to Capital Chats.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to WisPolitics Capital Chats podcast brought to you by Spectrum. Today, I'm here in the office with my colleague Abigail Levins to talk about an interview she did with our Secretary of State, Sarah Godlewski, who is also running for Lieutenant Governor. So, Abigail, what are some of the things that you guys spoke about?
Yeah, we talked about Sarah Godlewski's run for Lieutenant Governor and why she thinks she's the best candidate for the job.
All right, let's hear what you guys talked about.
Thank you for agreeing to be on the podcast, Sarah. I want to talk to you about your announcement last week that you'd be running for Lieutenant Governor. Tell me about what went into that decision before you made it public. How long had you known you would probably do that?
Well, first of all, Abigail, thanks for having me. So I'll be honest, I didn't really think about running for Lieutenant Governor until after Governor Evers made his decision that he was not going to run for re-election. And for me, it was a few things. One is, as I've been traveling the state, I'm hearing stories about, for example, nurses who can't afford to live in the community that they serve while they're watching these billionaires get tax write-offs for their second and third vacation home. Or I'm talking to teachers who are driving Ubers on the weekends just to stay afloat. And to me, this is just showing how it's a system that works for the wealthy and corporations and not all of us. And I think quite frankly, Wisconsin deserves better. But then on top of it, I'm also a fifth generation Wisconsinite, and I really believe our state has given me and my family so much. But when I look at Hartley, my son, I worry, like, is he going to be able, he's 5, is he going to be able to swim in clean lakes and clean rivers and play in our public lands? Or is he going to have 3, 4 jobs just to stay afloat? Or I'm worried about public schools and their resources. And so for me, and kind of looking at all of these things collectively, I'm like, Lieutenant Governor is the best role because I want to be part of the team to get these things done, because these are complex issues and not one person is going to solve this. It's about building the coalitions, being pragmatic, and I really believe I'm best fit to do that in this role as Lieutenant Governor.
Yeah, and that's the next question I want to ask you. What makes you the best choice for Lieutenant Governor? After you say it's the best role for you, what makes you the best person for Wisconsin?
Well, for starters, I have a record of getting things done for Wisconsin. As state treasurer, I led a $1.5 billion trust fund. We provided record-breaking distributions to our public schools that doubled when I chaired that fund, and provided millions that helped finance projects across the state. We also decreased foreclosures and expanded homeownership when I was state treasurer. And then as Secretary of State, we've now provided access to services. We've modernized the entire office. And so to me, it's a record of getting things done. People told me there was no way we could do these things, whether it was as Treasurer or Secretary of State. And I said, I will show you. And that's exactly what we're doing. And to me, I look forward to continuing to do that as Lieutenant Governor, is showing people how this office can be part of the team to get things done. I will also say, Abigail, I think the other big piece is that we have to be able to win. And in 2018, I flipped 9 Trump counties, which was more than the governor, lieutenant governor, and attorney general. And I think as a Western Wisconsinite, you've got to show up in places, listen, and talk to people. And I think that's another important skill that I also can bring and help the ticket.
Yeah, and on wanting to work for Wisconsin, what are some of the specific priorities you'll highlight, and how would you work with the governor on those? Because that'll be a big part of your role, working with the governor. Tell me about what that'll look like for you.
Well, I have always been a coalition builder, whether that is my time when I was supporting national security in the Pentagon for almost a decade, to my work as state treasurer. We started the homeowners task force and built a coalition with everybody from the CAP agencies, which are the kind of community service agencies, to the realtors, to financial planners. And that's how we were able to really deliver and prevent foreclosures and expand homeownership. And so look, like, that's something that I have always done. And I get it, as a mom raising a kid and somebody who grew up as the daughter of two public school teachers. I remember my parents and the conversations about how are we going to be able to afford school supplies and going to thrift sales. And like, that's how I've grown up, and working at Pizza Hut and kind of that hard work. Like, to me, these are the skills that are what make Wisconsin so great. And I just feel very lucky that I want to be able to continue to provide those skills in this role as lieutenant
Yeah.
governor.
Yeah. And talk to me about campaigning. You've got a year until the primary and over that until the general election. Tell me what your plan is for the next year to try to win over Wisconsinites to your platform.
Well, for starters, I think what's so important is that we've got to meet Wisconsinites where they are. We can't just expect them to come to us. We've got to meet where they are and listen. And I think something that we are seeing over and over again is folks just don't trust politicians. And how do we address that? We address that by listening, understanding some of the things that they are facing that's keeping them up at night. And then that's how we work to rebuild trust, because they should be able to trust their elected officials to do what's in their best interest to deliver. But we know that conspiracy theories and social media really breaks down that trust. And so to me, you got to go to the source. You got to go to where people are, sit down, have coffee, talk to them. And that's not something you can do in a few days or a few weeks. That's something that takes time. And so that's what I really look forward to doing over the next year plus, is meeting Wisconsinites, having these conversations, and collectively knowing that we're better when we all work together.
Yeah, and do you think there are any particular parts of the state that Democrats will need to work harder in, you as well as other candidates?
Well, we've got to make sure that we are showing up everywhere, not just where Democrats feel welcomed, but where Wisconsinites live and work. Like, we've got to be able to show up to Friday fish fries in red counties, or to rodeos in northern Wisconsin, or places that we might not think Democrats are welcomed, because that's what matters. And then having these conversations, because you know what we all share? We all share the same vision of having a Wisconsin where it's the best place to live, work, and raise a family. But then getting to the nuances of that is actually showing up in these places. And so immediately after I launched my campaign, we went to Western Wisconsin and Central Wisconsin. And these counties aren't known for being blue by any means, but to me, that's what's important, is getting out there and showing up.
Yeah, and I know you're also the first vice chair of the state party. Are there any other particular strategies you think that Democrats should be working on leading up to 2026 that maybe even you're applying as well?
Well, I think there's a few things. I think one is we've got to talk about kitchen table economics. As the former state treasurer, affordability is a big issue that keeps people up at night. They want to be able to own a home, but yet we're behind sometimes when it comes to first-time home ownership. They want to be able to live a quality life and not work three jobs just to stay afloat, or worried about health care that's going to maybe doesn't cover them in a way that leaves them bankrupt. And so we've got to, I think, get to these kitchen table economic issues and talk about how, tariffs and chaos that's coming out of the White House is part of what's causing our costs to rise. And Democrats can address that. And we have in the past, and we'll continue to do that in the future. When we look at what Governor Evers, with, for example, his Prescription Drug Accountability Board, which would hold prescription drug companies accountable. Like, these are the innovative solutions that Democrats are proposing and we want to get done. And so I think it's talking about these issues, but doing that. And again, where we're going to like Oconto County, Marathon County, Washington County, like places across the state that might look red on paper, but at the end of the day, they want folks that are going to listen and really deliver. And I think we can, when we meet people and start having these conversations, we can do that.
Yeah. Another challenge that's going to come up for candidates next year is name recognition. WisPolitics was speaking with Charles Franklin from Marquette Law School on how that might be one of the bigger issues for statewide candidates. What do you make of that? Do you think already having a state office will help you? Or how are you going to overcome that challenge?
Yeah, I think for me, now serving in two statewide offices, first when I ran for state treasurer, and again, I was a political nobody. and flipped more Trump counties. And I think it was, again, because you got to travel and meet people where they are, and now serving as Secretary of State. So I do think that is something that does work in people's favor. But look, at the same time, we've got a long campaign season, and that's why it's so important for candidates to get out there so they can gain and earn that name recognition and that trust that voters that they need in order to vote for individuals.
Yeah, one last campaign question on another challenge is fundraising, as these races are getting way more expensive. How are you feeling about that? Do you think you can fundraise enough to get that name recognition, to get out there and win this race?
Well, after I announced I was running for lieutenant governor, I was just so honored by low dollar donations that were coming in from across the state. These are people who have never donated before, let alone donate to the lieutenant governor of Wisconsin. And it's that kind of grassroots donation energy that I believe is core to this campaign and is going to help fuel us, whether it's from the grassroots energy, knocking doors, making phone calls, to the $5, $10 donations that are going to help finance the ads and the commercials that we need on television to win.
Yeah. Well, that's all the questions I had for you, Secretary. I just want to thank you again for coming on the podcast with me. I appreciate your time.
Well, thanks again for having me, and I'll come anytime, Abigail, so appreciate it.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to this week's WisPolitics Capital Chats podcast brought to you by Spectrum. If you want to learn more about the lieutenant governor or governor's race, you can head to our website at wispolitics.com. But for now, I'm Kate Morton.
And I'm Abigail Evans.